Hi, Blue Team. So things are getting exciting. Last time we read, we ended up with the girls standing outside of Building 10 in the middle of the night, getting ready to rescue Archie when they have a shopping cart with them. So, Chapter 41. It had looked terrible in the daylight. The very friendly animal center looked even worse in the dark. The building seemed morose and also slightly guilty, as if it had done something terrible and had hunkered itself down in the ground, hoping that no one would notice. "I bet they don't even bother to lock the door here," said Beverly. "Who would want to get into this place anyway?" "Us," said Louisiana. "The three rancheros? Hurry up, Archie is inside. He's waiting for us." Beverly snorted, but she got out her pocket knife and went up to the door and said, "This won't take any time at all." And it didn't. She put the tip of the knife into the door and jiggled it, and a second later the door to Building 10 swung wide. Darkness seemed to roll out of it like a cloud. It had been dark in Building 10 in the daylight. How dark would it be at night? There wasn't even the light of a single swaying bulb. "I can't," said Raymie. "What do you mean?" said Louisiana. "I'll just wait here," said Raymie. Beverly shone her the flashlight into the cavern. "Shine it on the floor," said Louisiana. "I know he's behind that door." "Yeah," said Beverly. "You said so already." She turned to Raymie. "You can wait here. It's fine." "No," said Louisiana. "All of us. All the rancheros. Or we don't go at all." "Okay," said Raymie, because she had to go where they went. She had to protect them if she could. They had to protect her. The three of them stepped into Building 10. Beverly's flashlight beam wavered in the darkness, and then it held steady. It smelled terrible inside. Ammonia. Something rotten. Beverly shone the flashlight at the other door. And then the horrible howl started. Someone was dying. Someone had given up all hope. Someone was filled with a despair too terrible for words. "Take my hand," whispered Chapter 42. Louisiana grabbed Raymie's hand. Raymie grabbed Beverly's hand. The flashlight beam danced wildly around the room. It shone on the ceiling, the metal desk, the filing cabinets. It illuminated for a moment the single unlit bulb, and Raymie, ridiculously, felt angry at the light bulb. Couldn't it even try? "Oh, my goodness. Oh, no, no," said Louisiana. Her lungs wheezed. She took a deep, raspy breath, and then she outed, "Archie, here I am!" The howling continued. "Can you?" said Louisiana. Her teeth were chattering. "Can you unlock the other door?" "Sure," said Beverly. They moved together, holding on to each other, toward the door. "You're going to have to let go of my hand," said Beverly to Raymie. "I need to pick the lock." "Okay," said Raymie. She held tight to Beverly's hand. "Look," said Beverly, "why don't you hold the flashlight?" Raymie dropped Beverly's hand and took the flashlight. "Shine it right on the doorknob, okay?" said Beverly. Raymie shone the flashlight on the door, just as Louisiana reached forward and turned the knob. The door wasn't even locked. It opened slowly. The sound of howling got louder. "Archie?" said Louisiana. Beverly took a deep breath. "Give me the flashlight," she said. She took the flashlight from Raymie and swung it around the room, filled with cages. There were small cages and large cages. The small cages were piled on top of each other, and the large cages looked like human prisons, and all of the cages were empty. There wasn't a cat anywhere in sight. It was a terrible room. Raymie wished they had never seen it, because now she would never forget it. "Archie!" shouted Louisiana. Beverly stepped farther into the room. "They're empty," said Raymie. "No one's here." "Who's howling then?" said Beverly. "Oh, Archie," whispered Louisiana. "I'm sorry." Beverly walked around the room, swinging the flashlight in great swirling arcs. And then she said, "Here, here." Chapter 43. It wasn't Archie. It wasn't even a cat. It was a dog. Or it might have been a dog at some point. He had ears so long that they were touching the ground. His body was small and stretched out. One eye was crusted over and swollen shut. "Oh," said Louisiana, "he's some kind of rabbit." "He's a dog," said Beverly. The dog wagged his tail. Beverly put her hand through the wire of the cage. She patted the dog on the head. "Okay," said Beverly. Okay, it's okay. The dog wagged his tail some more, but when Beverly took her hand away and he stopped wagging his tail and started to howl. The hair on Raymie's legs stood up. Her toes flexed without even intending to move them. Right, said Beverly. Okay. She raised the latch on the cage and opened the door. The dog stopped howling. He stepped out toward them, wagging his tail. He looked up at the three of them out of his one good eye and wagged his tail some more. Louisiana dropped to her knees. She wrapped him up in her arms. I'm going to call him Bunny, she said. That's the stupidest name I've ever heard, said Beverly. Let's just go, said Raymie. Louisiana picked up the dog. Beverly shone the flashlight ahead of them, and they walked out of the terrible darkness of Building 10 and into the normal darkness of nighttime. The moon was still up in the sky, or half of it was. It didn't seem possible to Raymie that the moon was still shining after everything that had happened, but there it was, brilliant and very far away. Raymie sat down on the curb. Louisiana sat down next to her. The dog smelled terrible. Raymie put out her hand and touched the top of his head. There were bumps on it. Archie isn't dead, said Louisiana. Would you please shut up, said Beverly. He's not dead, but he's missing and I don't know how to find him. Fine, said Beverly. He's missing. Right now, what we need to do is get out of here. I don't think I can walk anymore, said Louisiana. I feel too sad to walk. Get in the cart then, said Beverly. We'll push you. What about Bunny, said Louisiana. We'll push him too, duh. Louisiana stood up. Here, said Raymie. Give me the dog. Louisiana handed Bunny to Raymie, and Beverly picked Louisiana up and put her in the cart. It's not very comfortable in here, said Louisiana. Who said it would be comfortable, said Beverly. No one, said Louisiana, and then she said, I feel really sad. I feel all hollow. I know, said Raymie. She handed Bunny to Louisiana. Louisiana wrapped her arms around the dog. I wonder where Archie is, said Louisiana. And I wonder what will become of us. Don't you wonder what will become of us? No one answered her. Chapter 44. Beverly was pushing the cart, and Raymie was walking beside her. Raymie said, I wish we could go to the top of the Belknap right now. Why, said Beverly. Just to see if we could, I don't know, see things. It's dark, said Beverly. You wouldn't see much. Besides, the place is all locked up, and you need a key to use the elevator. You could figure it out, said Raymie. You could break in and find the key. I could break in anywhere, said Beverly. So what? There's no point in going up there. Going up where? Said Louisiana. To the top of the Belknap Tower, said Raymie. Ooh, said Louisiana. I'm afraid of heights. She stood up in the cart and turned to face them. I would have been a disappointment to my parents. I couldn't have been a very good flying elefante. Yes, said Beverly. You said so already. Sit down before you fall over. Louisiana sat down and gathered Bunny back into her arms. The wonky wheel on the grocery cart stuttered and stuck as they started going uphill. Raymie and Beverly pushed Louisiana together. Inside the cart, Louisiana was silent. They were almost to the top of the hill. Raymie knew what was below them. It was Mabel Swip Memorial Hospital, and next to that was Swip Pond, where Mrs. Sylvester went to feed the swans. Swip Pond wasn't really a pond, or it hadn't started out as a pond. It had started out as a sinkhole, but now it was called Swip Pond because Mabel Swip, who owned the land, had donated the sinkhole to the city and then paid for some swans and some lamps to surround it and make it look elegant. From the top of the hill, the pond looked like a single dark eye staring at Raymie. The lamps, 5 of them, formed a solemn constellation of moons around the pond. There weren't any swans in sight. Suddenly, Raymie was terribly, horribly lonely. She wished that she could find a payphone and call Mrs. Sylvester and hear her say, Clark Family Insurance, how may we protect you? But even if she found a phone, Mrs. Sylvester wouldn't be there. It was the middle of the night. Clark Family Insurance was closed. Raymie tried to flex her toes. Louisiana stood up again. She was holding Bunny close to her chest. She faced forward. "Go faster," she said. "Are you kidding?" said Beverly. "Who do you think you are? Some kind of queen? We're pushing you as hard as we can. This grocery cart is worthless. It's like the wheels aren't even wheels. It's like they're squares or something." Raymie and Beverly pushed together. One great push. And somehow, how did this happen? Raymie didn't even know. The cart got away from them. They didn't let go. It wasn't that at all. It was more like the hill grabbed the cart from them. 1 minute they were pushing, and the next minute the tag and bag grocery cart was out of their hands, rolling down the hill. Louisiana, Bunny in her arms, turned and looked back at Beverly and Raymie. "Oh my goodness," she said. "Goodbye." And then the cart and Louisiana and Bunny were gone, clattering down the hill at an impossible speed, heading right for the pond that used to be a sinkhole. "No," said Beverly, "no." They started to run, but the cart was done with stuttering and balking. The cart was ready to move. Even with its wonky wheel, it was faster than they were. It was determined. From a long way away came the sound of Louisiana's voice. Only it didn't sound like Louisiana. It was eerie, resigned, the voice of a ghost. And what the ghost said was, "But I can't swim." Bunny started to howl, his terrible end-of-the-world howl. Raymie ran faster. She could feel her heart and soul. Her heart was beating, and her soul was right up beside her heart. No, that wasn't right. It was more like her soul was her whole body. She was nothing but soul. And then, from somewhere in the darkness, Raymie heard Mrs. Borkowski's voice. And what Mrs. Borkowski said was, "Run, run, run!" Chapter 45. Raymie ran. Beverly ran ahead of her. Raymie could see the grocery cart. She could see Louisiana's bunny barrettes. They were glinting, winking at her. She could see Bunny's strange long ears blowing out behind him. They looked like wings. And she could see a swan. He was standing at the edge of the pond. He was looking up at what was coming toward him, and he didn't look happy. Mrs. Sylvester had always said that swans were terribly moody creatures. "No!" screamed Louisiana. Raymie watched the tag and bag cart rise up in the air as if it were attempting to leave the earth altogether. And then it entered Swip Pond with a surprisingly small splash. The swan stretched his wings out as far as they would go. He let out a noise that sounded like a complaint, or maybe it was a warning. Beverly was at the edge of the pond now. Raymie, still running, was behind her, and this was when Raymie heard Mrs. Borkowski's voice for the last time in her life. She did not say, "Tell me, why does the world exist?" She did not say, "Pfft." Mrs. Borkowski said, "You, now, this you can do." Raymie kept running. She ran past Beverly, who was standing and staring. She took a deep breath and dove into the pond, and the water closed over her head, and she went down as far as she could in the darkness. She flexed her toes, like Mr. Stephanopoulos had taught her to do. She opened her eyes. She reached out her hands and parted the dark water. Chapter 46. It turned out that Bunny knew how to swim. The dog went paddling past Raymie just as she came up for air. Bunny's ears were floating on either side of his one-eyed head. He looked like a sea monster, some mythical beast, part fish and part dog. Raymie took a deep breath and went back down under the water. She saw the tag and bag grocery cart. It was on its side, floating slowly toward the bottom. She reached for it. The cart was cold and heavy and empty. Raymie let it go. She went back up to the surface and took another great gasp of air. She saw Beverly pulling Bunny out of the water. The swan was standing beside Beverly. He was stretching his neck and then lowering it, stretching it and lowering it, as if he were working up the courage to make an announcement. Beverly said, "Where is she?" Raymie didn't answer. She dove back underwater. She opened her eyes in the darkness and saw the glint of the shopping cart again. And then she saw the glimmer of a bunny barrette. A bunny barrette that was attached to the head of Louisiana Elefante. Raymie swam toward Louisiana and pulled her into her arms. Raymie had saved Edgar the drowning dummy from drowning many, many times. She was good at it. Mr. Stephanopoulos had told her that she was good at it, but Louisiana felt different from Edgar. She was somehow both heavier and lighter. Raymie wrapped her arms tight around Louisiana. She kicked her feet and swam for the surface. And what Raymie thought as they rose together was that this was the easiest thing in the world to save somebody. For the first time, she understood Florence Nightingale and her lantern and the bright and shining path. She understood why Edward Option had given her the book. For just a minute, she understood everything in the whole world. She wished that she had been there when Clara Wingtip had drowned. She would have saved her too. She was Raymie Nightingale coming to the rescue. So this is really exciting. The next time we'll start with chapter 47. Thanks.